Welcome to The Bottom Line. The conflict in Ferguson has been one of the most talked about issues in America. What are public figures saying on the debate?
And some students on campus brought the issues of Ferguson here, what they did to express their views, and what message they have for the community.
Plus the use of body cameras. I'll have what the Normal Police Department thinks about the possible solution.
Good afternoon, I'm Emily Konopka and welcome to The Bottom Line. Today we are looking at the heated issue of the events in Ferguson, Missouri. This topic has been making national and international headlines for weeks, so here's a recap of the events that took place. On August 9th, Missouri teenager Michael Brown was shot and killed by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. How the encounter between Wilson and Brown began was highly disputed. The next day, angry residents took to the streets in protest. Police arrived with military-style weapons, sparking even more controversy and unrest. 2 days after the shooting, the FBI opened a civil rights inquiry on the incident. On August 14th, President Obama denounced the actions of both police and protesters. Images of a predominantly white police force firing tear gas into mostly an African-American crowd spread across the country, bringing the issue to the forefront of national attention. By August 15th, Officer Darren Wilson was identified as the shooter in the case. Conflicting statements by Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson created confusion about whether or not Officer Wilson knew Michael Brown was involved in a robbery right before the shooting took place. On August 17th, Brown's family released the results of his autopsy, and by the next day, the National Guard was ordered to Ferguson. 2.5 weeks after Brown's death, the Department of Justice announced they would open a full civil rights investigation of the Ferguson Police Department. On October 17th, Officer Wilson spoke for the first time about the incident. Some of his statements conflicted with witness accounts about the physical altercation that occurred. A month later, the governor of Missouri declared a state of emergency in preparation for the grand jury's decision on whether or not to indict Officer Wilson. Then, on November 24th, a grand jury decided not to indict Officer Wilson, sparking riots and protests across the nation. And since the grand jury's decision less than 2 weeks ago, protests have taken to the street, and some even burning down businesses and causing riots. And Officer Wilson has since resigned from his position at the Ferguson Police Department. The grand jury decision, like I said, has caused an outpour of opinions from people all across the country. We saw some of those opinions expressed in protests right here on campus this week. Christy O'Connor spoke to more students about it this morning to see what they think of the decision. Christy, what did you find out?
Emily, I'm live outside DeGarmo Hall, where ISU students lined up on Monday to protest the grand jury's decision and also show support for Michael Brown. Now, while the protests were not violent, students certainly were not shy to express their opinions on the issue. Aaron will have more on that later, but meantime, I spoke to some ISU students this morning and had a different situation. I had a hard time finding people that were willing to talk to me about this issue. Some said they just felt well uninformed to talk about it and form an opinion, and others seemed a little bit uncomfortable because of the racial tension surrounding this issue. But those that did talk to me all had a similar message in mind, that violence is not the answer.
I think that the Ferguson case is definitely a race issue, and I think that the decision that was made was definitely unjust.
The indictment was wrong. He should have been charged.
No cop wants to pull their gun and actually kill somebody like that. I just think it was self-defense.
Personally, I think that it's a shame that he didn't get penalized for the shooting. I think that the protesters is not going to stop anything.
So where do you think we can go from here?
I think the first step is talking about it, and I'm glad that's happening, but I think the biggest problem is communication about it, because when you start talking about Ferguson, immediately the walls go up and people get defensive. And I think once people get defensive, communication stops happening.
Maybe temporarily, I think the police body cams are a good idea, but I think it's also important that the people take action by voting and by continuing to protest.
Be aware and non-confrontational. And probably the third thing is I'm very much for police body cams.
Now, you heard some students mention body cameras as a possible solution to preventing issues between police officers and the public. I spoke with the Normal Police Chief this morning, and he told me some of his plans about the use of body cameras. I'll have more from him coming up after the break. Emily?
Christy, thanks. Well, the reaction to the Ferguson situation has spread all across the country, and Bloomington Normal is no exception to that. The Bottom Line's Aaron Eads joins us now. Aaron, in what way has Ferguson come to ISU?
Well, Emily, as we just heard from Christy, ISU students do have mixed reactions, as we expected. But earlier this week, a group of people who feel the same way about the issues met up. They put their voices and bodies together, literally, to protest several different items, from the Michael Brown shooting itself to Darren Wilson's indictment decision to the overall status of the black population in America. This was on Monday. Take a look.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! How long? 4 hours! How long? 4 hours! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter!
We have to set standards just to change people's lives.
Not just ours,
but everyone else.
Turn up, don't turn down. We do this for Mike Brown.
We're here because we have a mutual interest today. We stand for something very, very important. We stand for racial justice. We believe that for people of color, that justice has yet to come in this country.
I think it's important to note that we aren't Mike Brown, but I think it's more important to differentiate that we are not Darren Wilson either.
For the most part, the people who were rioting were probably not protesters. Because if you watch what was going on CNN, a lot of those protesters, especially college students, went up to those people and were like, what are you doing? This is your own community. There's no reason for you guys to be destroying your community in the process of this protest. You guys are making us all look bad.
I like the direction we're moving in. This is great.
That protest ended on a positive note. As you heard, several spoke before the crowd with messages both hopeful and constructive with regard to race relations. For the Bottom Line, I'm Aaron Eads. Back to you, Emily.
Thanks, Aaron. One of the women you just saw leading the protest around campus is in that video, is up in the SMAC right now with Tyler Merritt. Let's go up there now.
And Tyler Merritt up here in the SMAC. Thanks, Emily. With a special guest here. She's a member of the NAACP chapter here on campus, and she's been one of the many ISU protesters, again, you just saw in that video. Kaya Best right here. And I'm asking you, Kaya, on Monday, tell me what was going on in the Bone. I walked through there, lots of students sitting around, and you were the one right there up on the megaphone. What were you telling them?
I was pretty much just explaining my personal view of exactly what has been going on and the reason, and also just explaining my reason why I decided to help April lead this movement at our school, which was actually a national movement around the entire country. So after I heard that, and then I actually tried to plan one on my own with NAACP, and then I found out April put one up before I did, so I just corresponded with her, and it just became this huge thing. And I was also just talking about how impressed I was that predominantly white school like ours, just everyone was so incorporated. There was lots of people from different backgrounds, different races, different genders, sexualities, who were all there for the same purpose and the same reason I was. And I for some reason, I was just really moved by that.
And I think that's definitely really fascinating. A bunch of different types of people. It wasn't about what kind of person you were. It was just about the cause. Mm-hmm. And talk about how important it is for students to get involved and make change happen rather than just wait for it to happen.
Just my personal stance on that. At the end of the day, I feel like as college students, we need to make sure that we are, like, when people say that we are the future, we really are. We really are the group, especially that is starting to push this movement on and trying to make sure that that we are all incorporated into what's going to be happening in our future, because we're really the main ones who can actually seriously affect it. And the fact that a lot of college students around the world and around our country are doing that, it's impressive.
And Kaya, do you see change happening?
I really do. A lot of people were talking about it on campus even after it was going on, which was really impressive as well.
Cool. Thank you very much for joining us. Right back to you guys. I'll be back here in the SMAC. Tyler Merritt, Bottom Line.
Tyler, thanks so much for that. And of course, we want to add your voice to the conversation. Tell us what you think and follow us on Twitter at TV10 Bottom Line, or post on our Facebook page. Just search TV10 Bottom Line. And coming up next on the Bottom Line, Tyler is back up in the SMAC looking at what many public figures are saying about the grand jury's decision. Stay with us.
Now, as the Ferguson issue has come into the spotlight, we've seen many different public figures talking about it, from tweeting about it, from going on to national news outlets and talking about it. And it's been from the President of the United States all the way from sports stars to different music rappers. Everybody's been talking about it. So let's take a look about what some of them had to say.
I've been out involved in civil rights all my life. We have seen cases go ways that we felt were right and ways that we felt was wrong. I've never seen a prosecutor hold a press conference to discredit the victim.
That's right. It's much bigger than Mike Brown. It's much bigger than Trayvon Martin and like I say, any other kid that lose their life over anything. In our society, we just have to figure out a way to grow together and not apart.
For a long time, America was able to just ignore it, look away, and pretend it didn't exist because it didn't happen in every area of America. But slowly that area began to spread and things began to happen, and America has created a monster.
The fact is, in too many parts of this country, a deep distrust exists between law enforcement and communities of color. Some of this is the result of the legacy of racial discrimination in this country. And this is tragic because nobody needs good policing more than poor communities with higher crime rates.
You know, I was in Philly this summer when I saw 4 black kids went in a store and left money when nobody was in the store. But unfortunately, the way the media portrays a lot of black people, we only put the negative black people on television, Mike. We don't put the good, hard-working black people. And that's what I said, and that's what I meant. There's a perception among some black people, you're not a thug, a hood rat. You don't wear your pants down by your you're not black enough. And they always holding us back, plain and simple. And I ain't shutting up, and I ain't backing down.
I don't want to see my people being herded around in the same, soil that they pay taxes on, saying that they can't protest for their cause, and then it becomes violent.
Now, that's just some of the many opinions expressed, and as you can imagine, and I'm sure you've seen on your feeds, Twitter has exploded from celebrities and even all of us talking about this whole Ferguson issue. Now, I want you to take a look at this map right here. These yellow dots represent the amount of tweets coming out about Ferguson on the issue, and I want you just to look at this map, and when I click play, to guess when the indictment would actually be announced, and it'll not be hard to tell. So we can see here, people are tweeting, a lot of people on the East Coast tweeting about it, but just look how yellow the map starts to get. And that's probably exactly when the indictment would have been announced. And Twitter just exploded with everything. Now, a lot of people are actually calling Ferguson just a victim of social media, and it's just been overblown into such a huge thing. But of course, that opinion is up to you, whether you think social media has been a big burden or whether it has helped the issue in Ferguson and brought light to the issue. Reporting here in the Smack for the TV10's Bottom Line, I'm Tyler Merritt.
Thanks, Tyler. Now we go back out live to Christy O'Connor. She gives us details on what the Normal Police Department is thinking in regards to body cameras.
Earlier this week, President Obama proposed a $263 million plan for the use of body cameras for police officers. I spoke with Normal Police Chief Rick Bleichner this morning and asked if body cameras were in the future for their department. And he said he has been looking into them, but they're sort of stuck in a gray area right now. For starters, they don't have the funds to buy the body cameras, but more importantly, body cameras are illegal under the eavesdropping law right now. They can use video and audio at vehicle stops, but it's not legal to, for example, a police officer to wear a body camera into the privacy of somebody's home. The Illinois legislators would need to reform the Eavesdropping Act before this can become legal statewide. Now, Chief Bleichner said that he is for the use of body cameras. He thinks it'd be a great tool to prevent tension between police officers and the public, but it's just that, a tool, and not a long-term solution. Live on DeGarmo Hall, I'm Christy O'Connor. Now back to you.
Thanks so much, Christy. And of course, we want to add your voice to the conversation. Tell us what you think and follow us on Twitter at TV10 Bottom Line or post on our Facebook page. Just search TV10 Bottom Line. And coming up next, Aaron Eid sits down with one of TV10's reporters who went to Ferguson the day after the grand jury's decision. Find out what she witnessed when we come back.
Welcome back to The Bottom Line. I'm Aaron Eads. I'm here with Summer Slevin. She is a reporter for TV10 News. She actually traveled to Ferguson herself, took some pictures and video that we're going to show you later, and I wanted to sit down with her, ask her about what her experience was. Thanks for being here, Summer.
Absolutely.
So you traveled to Ferguson the very early morning after the night that Darren Wilson's indictment decision was announced. And I think for many of us, whether we're journalists or not, would be apprehensive about that or would want to stay as far away from that as we can. So what made you decide to go?
Well, as many of my relatives and friends would describe me, I'm a bit crazy. And my journalism urges made me go. I really couldn't have not gone. I was sitting there and I was just hearing more and more information flow in. And I was curious, and I was also, I wanted to see really what was going on behind what the media was showing. And so as my journalism ways happened to motivate me, I went there and figured it out for myself and saw what I could for myself.
So tell me about what are some of the things you saw there. And you went there around midnight, is that correct?
I drove there pretty late in the evening or early in the evening, depending on how you look at it. And I got there and it was really scary. I mean, it was like there was fog around the town from the fireworks and the fires that had been going on. There were people that had, broken into windows, but I couldn't even see that. When I drove into the town, it was like just dead. There wasn't
So you
cars.
mostly witnessed an aftermath.
Right, yeah. Well, and when I got to the street where most of the chaos was happening, it was completely blocked off. So I tried to get as close as possible, but there was a police helicopter light that was shining on my vehicle, and I was stopped several times from police that were shining their flashlights in my car, and I was like, ugh.
So comparing what you saw to what everyone has been watching on television, what the media has portrayed it as, is there a difference between that? Do you see any inaccuracies that the media portrayed it by, or was it actually pretty legitimate?
Well, I mean, I didn't get to see a lot of it because I was staying far away because of what was blocked off. I didn't get to see the riots themselves. But from the next day when I talked to people, they said that there wasn't as many people rioting as portrayed. I was listening to the police scanner the whole time, and I could hear what was going on. And I could see the flames of the businesses that had been set on fire, of the cars that had been set on fire.
But you took care not to get too close to the actual protest.
Right, and I mean, you couldn't really get too close. At a certain point, they just blocked everything off, and you weren't allowed anywhere near that vicinity. But what I saw, I mean, there was a lot of chaos, but there wasn't as many people making it as chaotic as it was portrayed on the media.
So is there anything you feel that people didn't see that they should have?
The next day, I wanted people to see more of what was happening in the aftermath of the cleanup effort, of the community that was going on, that was coming together to clean up, and of the people that were ashamed that that was a representative of their city. There were a lot of, good people that had nothing to do with the riots. There was protesters that were completely separate from the rioters. And that's what I think people should have saw more of, was that there was a differentiation between the rioters and the protesters, the looters and the people that wanted peace.
Absolutely. So if we address the main issue at hand here, you were there, you saw it firsthand, and of course you're familiar with this area, Normal, Illinois as well. Let's compare Normal to Ferguson. So the situation has certainly highlighted the issue of race relations. Do you feel that that's an issue that we have to deal with nationally or only in certain areas of the country?
Definitely nationally. I think that, from what I've seen, is that the racism isn't necessarily one-on-one racism. It's not necessarily somebody like making racist slurs against another person. It's actually ingrained in systematic policies. It's ingrained in the school system, and it's ingrained internationally, but especially nationally. It's highlighted in specific areas of the country, but it's definitely nationally, and it could happen in Normal just as it happened in Ferguson.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate you coming in here and giving us your insight on that. That's something most people wouldn't have otherwise gotten to know about or get to see ever. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, on The Bottom Line, we're all about voices, and we want to add yours to the conversation. Tell us what you think and give us a like on Twitter, or go to TV10 Bottom Line and post on our Facebook page. Just search TV10 Bottom Line. Coming up next, we consider all of the facts to give you your bottom line, make our conclusions, and summarize what we found. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. In the last half hour, we've shown you the facts about the events happening in Ferguson, Missouri.
We've also shown how the movement sparked by the death of Michael Brown has reached ISU's campus.
Christy O'Connor talked to students about their reaction to the grand jury's decision. While there were some mixed feelings on the decision, one thing everyone agreed on, that violence and rioting will not change anything.
A lot of people mentioned a short-term solution would be police body cameras, but they know that ending racial discrimination and tensions in the United States will be a long-term battle.
So, Aaron, we heard from Kaya up in the SMAC about the protest that happened on Monday. What was your reaction to what she had to say?
You know, I think it was definitely interesting to get the perspective of somebody who's organizing the protest. You know, that's something that a lot of journalists don't go after, and I'm glad that we did today on the show. It was definitely interesting to hear that, you know, that wasn't the solution to the problem. She mentioned to Tyler, she was telling him that while it was good that they did something, that they have a lot more to do and that they're, as they see it, they're far from done in what they're hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. It was very insightful what she had to say, and that the main thing was that they were being peaceful. It was a protest, not a riot.
Absolutely, and it was a great discussion that I sat down and had with Summer, too, about all of the things that she witnessed firsthand when she went to Ferguson. I don't think it's a perspective that many people would have been able to know otherwise.
Yeah, that's definitely true, Aaron. What she had to say, what she witnessed, the community effort afterwards, which I think is one of the most important things, and that the media, a lot of national media has been focusing on, they're burning down buildings, they're rioting, but not a lot of people have focused on that there are people who are protesting peacefully and are trying to get solutions from this, but they're not doing it in a violent way that's causing more damage to the community. They're trying to help the community grow and learn from everything that's been going on.
Absolutely, and while this is difficult to cover, I think that's the one thing that all parties can agree on, is that violence is definitely not something that's acceptable, whether or not the cause is something that's worth fighting for. There's no excuse for tearing up the community and causing violence in others' neighborhoods, which is something that Kai definitely pointed out to us, and she actually mentioned that in her speech that she was during the protest.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for joining us for our last edition of The Bottom Line for the semester. We want to thank our director, Daniel Leibovitz, and it's also Aaron Need's last day here at TV10, so thank you so much, Aaron, for all your hard work this semester.
Thank you for thanking me.
Thanks for joining us this semester, and have a great rest of your day and a great holiday season.